Today I want to talk about discipline, and more specifically, like spiritual discipline, kind of like the discipline you'd have in a spiritual practice. Okay, now if you've been studying spirituality somewhere in some book or with some yoga teacher or meditation teacher, or if you're working with a teacher, you've probably bumped into this idea that if you have a spiritual practice, okay, it will deepen your spirituality. It does all kinds of cool things, right? For the record, I have found this to be true. I think it's good for a couple of reasons. When we do, I'm going to call it, when we do something that connects us with our spiritual nature or connects us with the part of us that's connected to life and to spirit and to the universe, whatever, it seems to dial us in and have us touch base with that. And then as we go through our day, it gives us this point of reference that's like, oh, this is how life can feel. It can feel connected, and then I'm more likely to walk with that in my day, is what I have found. And the other thing that I've found is when we do it regularly, it helps our spiritual connection kind of deepen, just because we're touching in and it goes a little deeper, subtly over time perhaps, but subtly it goes a little deeper and a little deeper. We may not even notice it, but it's going a little deeper and a little deeper. However, this has been a bugaboo and a challenge for a lot of people, myself included, especially in my early spiritual practices. It was a real challenge, and I have clients that say, oh, they confess to me, I really haven't been meditating enough, and I remember, I've gone through that as well, and I understand, and so. What I think will help with that is I think what matters is the energy that we bring to our discipline or to our spiritual practice makes all the difference in the world. And I want to contrast kind of two different energies, just to kind of do a little compare and contrast here. One I'm going to call joyful discipline. Okay, and so we're doing it because we are finding joy in it. And the other I'm going to call forced discipline. We're kind of doing it because we have to. We're like making ourselves do it because it's supposed to be good for us, so we're going to do it. It's like a New Year's resolution where you're going to exercise more or something. It's got that energy. And of course, those don't often go well. And so, and I want to look just a little deeper at the nature of these energies. When we're the joyful energy, if we're finding joy in it, we're like looking forward to it, and our energy is like moving toward the practice. Okay, and it's a positive, joyful, love-based energy, right? It's like, oh boy, I'm gonna enjoy this. I'm gonna go to my yoga class. I'm so looking forward to it. That's a really good way to approach a spiritual practice, versus a forced discipline is more like, oh my gosh, I have to do my meditation. I don't have time, or I really don't feel like it. But oh my gosh, I have to do my meditation. I'm going to sit there and just look at my thoughts and get frustrated, and oh my God, I have to do it, but I'm going to do it, And then there's this type of energy. And if you really look at that energy, it kind of has this negative energy, or kind of like this fear-based quality to it, right? It's like we're forcing ourselves to do it because we believe that if we don't do it, something bad will happen, or I will be bad, or I won't be spiritual, or something good won't happen, like I won't have a spiritual awakening if I don't do my meditation. And it gets to be this rigid kind of make ourselves do it thing. And it's fear-based. We're doing it because we don't want a bad thing to happen. And our culture teaches us this, right? A lot of our discipline is fear-based, a lot of our motivation, but that's another topic. But especially when we do it in a spiritual practice, it's even more important. Because think about it. Okay, the whole idea, if we're doing a spiritual practice to connect with our spiritual nature, Okay. And then we're approaching it with a fear-based energy. It doesn't really make sense. I'm taking this negative energy, I'm forcing myself, it's a fear-based energy, and then I'm going to try to connect with my spiritual nature, which is based in joy and light and love. So we got fear and they don't match very well. In fact, maybe they even repel each other energetically. I don't know what they do energetically, but it doesn't sound very good, and so that's kind of why it's a problem in my sense. So what the idea is to find something joyful, create joy in your spiritual practice, and try to get it so it's not something you have to do. So here are some ways that perhaps might help you bring some joy into your spiritual practice and find some joyful discipline. Okay, so the first thing I call the litmus test, and I've referred to it earlier, is are you like looking forward to your spiritual practice? If you can find something, even one part of it that you're looking forward to, and that's a really good indicator that you're on the right track, versus if you're dreading it or avoiding it or saying, oh my gosh, I have to do that and I've been procrastinating, is like, that's not what we're looking for. Rather than like find something about your spiritual practice that you can look forward to. Maybe it's a part of your practice. Okay. Maybe it's like the shavasana after yoga. You're looking forward to that. Or in my music, some of you know that I am learning to play the didgeridoo, and some of that can be frustrating. I'm like creating new neural pathways as I learn to play this instrument, and it can be frustrating. But what I've found is I at the begin, and I like to do it at the beginning of my practice. Okay, I find something enjoyable to do and play. So I kind of start having fun and I get some momentum going, enjoying playing, and then I start challenging the more frustrating aspects of the practice. Okay, so another one is to find progress and success in your practice rather than, not progress and failure. Okay, and so if we can see ourselves getting better. Now, the musical instrument's really good for that because it's easier to see myself getting better at the didgeridoo. Like I can see like the way I was playing 2 months ago it's way better now. Okay, versus like meditation, it may not be as easy to notice that I'm making progress or that I'm succeeding, but maybe it's more subtle. Maybe I'm more calm, or maybe that, I'm just feeling better about myself. And so, but anyway, if you can find a way that you're succeeding and not failing, it really seems to help. I'll give you an example of what not to do. Okay, so early on when I was learning to meditate, I got this mistaken notion that meditation meant you quieted or stopped your thoughts. Okay, and as you might expect, if you've ever tried to do that, you know that it doesn't work so well. And so I was showing up and failing every day. I would show up and my mind would go all over the place and it'd say, oh, I really suck at meditation and I can't stop my thoughts, so I'm terrible. It wasn't until years later that I went to a meditation retreat and the teacher there, kind of helped me see that, the idea isn't to stop your thoughts. It's to notice your thoughts and see what else is there and find the quiet and peace that's beyond your thoughts. That made all the difference in the world to me, because I wasn't failing every day. I could start and I just noticed that, I'm thinking, well, I had a lot of thoughts today, but that's natural. What else is there? That made all the difference in the world, because it wasn't fun to have a spiritual practice that I felt like I was failing at every day, and so of course I didn't want to do it, So that would be an example of finding progress or success in your practice. Another skill I use is, I call it changing it up. okay, is like we tend to be creatures of habit and we find like the right way to meditate. At least I did. And then I did it the same way every time and this whole thing. And as I started meditating more, I started getting a little more fluid with it, to make it more interesting. Okay, maybe you change your yoga kriya and do a different thing or a different class, or I recently was kind of stuck at doing my meditation practice, and this coach I'm working with, she suggested that I start listening to this hemisync music, which is kind of like drumming and rattles and synthesizer that kind of balances your brain and creates this space. And then it's like, and I'm lying down instead of sitting up, right? I'm like, so now I'm like lying down and listening to this music with headphones, and it's different. And it's obviously a different type of meditation for sure, but it's like all of a sudden I'm not bored with it and I'm kind of looking forward to it. And then I've been doing this for about a month now, and today I had the thought, it's like, wow, maybe I'll go back to my other meditation. I almost miss the other meditation now. So it's adding some variety and kind of spicing it up a little bit and finding a way to kind of enjoy it and to change it up. If you're bored by it and it's stagnant, try something else. There's a lot of different ways to meditate. There's a lot of different spiritual practices. So, vary it up a little bit. Talk to your teacher, talk to someone in your class, and get some new ideas, or just experiment, a little bit. The last thing that I want to talk about is it's a type of spiritual practice that's called inquiry. I call it spiritual inquiry. You could call it journaling, and that's where you ask yourself a question. Okay, or you might be, you're asking like, what is important to me is one of my favorite inquiries, and then you might journal or think about it, and you allow the answer to come to you intuitively, and it's a way of going deeper inside yourself. Or you might be journaling about some trauma, or journaling about a pattern, a behavioral pattern or a relationship pattern that you're trying to break. Now, obviously, inquiry and journaling can get kind of heavy, okay? And so what I like to do is kind of like with the musical instrument, is approach it with some curiosity and some, I call it the inquisitive mind, is like finding something interesting about the inquiry to start and get some energy again, get some momentum going, and allow that, like, wow, that's really fascinating. That, wow, I do this and this, and this is kind of like this, and that's why I'm having trouble in my relationship. And like find a way that it's kind of interesting and allow that joyful and inquisitive energy to kind of carry you through the intensity and the pain and the having to look at things. So again, it's the way you approach it. Yes, spiritual work can be heavy. It can be painful. It can be sad. It can be intense. There's no really changing that, but it also has joy and love and beauty and expansiveness and awakening. So it's like, if you can bring some of those into your practice to balance it out a little bit, you're going to be more looking forward to your spiritual practice. So that is my video for this week. And thank you so much for watching. And I really hope you enjoy your week. And perhaps that if you do have a spiritual practice or you're wanting to start one, perhaps you can find, like, how can you bring some joy and some love and some beauty into it? Like, how can you find a way to look forward to it? And I will see you in a week.